Indeed, 2020 has been a challenging and unsettling year. What has become clear to all of us is that we are in a historical moment, and no one can really predict what the story will unfold. Educators and educational institutions must respond and adapt accordingly. Chinese language education in pre-K all the way to higher education is of no exception. The fact that we are all meeting virtually at NCLC is a testament to such adaptations. So in this plenary session, we have invited NCLC Program Advisory Committee members to discuss how their respective organizations have responded under these unprecedented circumstances. Throughout this session, we will discuss what each organization has done, lessons that they have learned, and what resources they can share with the field. While local, state, and federal policymakers and educators continue to have the conversation on how schooling will look like in the fall. We'd also like to spend a few moments here to pause and reflect. Along with our distinguished panelists, we aim to reflect upon the critical issues that we collectively contend with today. This includes not only the COVID-19 lockdown, social distancing, and the difficulties of conducting classes virtually, but the ongoing struggle for racial equity and social justice as well. To that note, we are aware of the fact that our topics and perspectives can be seen as US-based. However, the pandemic is global, as is the worldwide attempt to reconcile colonial past with post-colonial modernities. Hopefully, the lessons learned here today will have implications for your work in your local context. At this point, I'd like to introduce our panelists. The first one in the middle there, I don't know whether it's in the middle for you, Dr. Lisa Harris. She's a specialist for world languages and international education at the Virginia Department of Education. She's the current president of the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages, which is commonly known as NCLC. In 2015, she was named the State Supervisor of the Year by her esteemed colleagues at NCLC. The second one that I would introduce is Betsy Hart. She is the Director of Programs at the National Foreign Language Center at the University of Maryland. She's also the National Director of the StarTalk Project, a multi-year, multi-language federal project to promote the learning and teaching of critical languages in the United States. The next guest that we have is Mr. Baocai Jia. Baocai is Executive Director of Chinese Language Association of Secondary Elementary Schools, CLASS. That's the home organization of many Chinese K-12 teachers. He teaches at the Fremont Union High School District and is the lead, World Language Department lead at Cupertino High School in the state of California. The last one, but not the least, is Dr. Yi Xu. She's president of Chinese Language Teacher Association, CLTA, whose memberships are mostly from universities and colleges. She's an associate professor of Chinese at the University of Pittsburgh. Her research studies have been published in prestigious journals such as Foreign Language Annals, Language Teaching Research, Modern Language Journal, and Second Language Research. Welcome. So thank you all for agreeing to serve on this panel and share with the audience your work and perspectives. My first question to all of you is about the work you have done over the past few months. Can you take us through the immediate obstacles foreseen by your organization and what steps were made to mitigate those obstacles? And also, please give us a few highlights for best practices that your organization has offered and make available for Chinese language educators throughout the field. So Lisa, would you like to take this first?
Great. Thank you, Shuhan. So this is such an interesting question to start with, because the very first thing we realized as an organization was that we weren't just moving suddenly from classroom teaching to remote teaching, but that we were learning how to operate in a crisis mode, that we were changing our whole way of doing things. And so teachers had to learn not only the technology piece very quickly, but also how to work with home while struggling with having their own children to supervise, how to focus on their students, how to do conferencing, how to adapt their regular schedule to maintain learning during a time when we were dealing with a crisis at home. So we very quickly identified obstacles that were going to particularly affect language teachers. Internet issues that affected everybody are particularly important when you're trying to teach languages, because we are dealing with the nuances of communication that can't always be conveyed using technology. The language gaps that exist when we're trying to help families with home languages other than English to provide support for remote learning for their children. Locating digital resources in the target language and being able to sustain our program models, particularly our high impact models like dual language immersion with fidelity to both the language and the content. So a lot of these were the issues we immediately worked on. And so our organization works at the state level to try to come up with policies that would quickly provide guidance for local school districts and for teachers to try to mitigate some of these issues, and to ensure that we make sure the unique challenges that come along with engaging students in language learning were included in the discussions on guidance for state level policy. Quickly, as a group, we decided to pull together a resource bank, which many other organizations have done as well, to help teachers navigate that flood of resources that were being made to them. And beyond that, many of our members also created professional development and webinars to help teachers navigate those resources. So not just making the list, but also providing assistance in being able to curate that list for yourself and select what best suits the individual needs.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, by the way, Lisa just mentioned a lot of resources and so forth, and I'm sure all the panelists will mention different kinds of resources. So after this session, we'll make them available later. Betsy, would you like to take on?
Thank you, Shuhan. And I'm delighted to be here to participate in this panel about such critical issues. So StarTalk is a summer program, and it has been offering language learning to students and professional development for teachers for 14 years. It's a summer program, as I said. Chinese is by far the largest and most popular language in StarTalk. Since we've offered over 1,100 programs and to 51,000 teachers and students. And we were so looking forward to summer 2020. But because of COVID, that all of our summer programs were postponed to 2021. We were not able to make a shift to offer any of our programs online because many of our students come from underserved communities and would not have the technical capability to participate. So all programs were deferred to 2021. So at the University of Maryland National Foreign Language Center, we turned our energy into resources, increasing the number of resources and improving the user experience with those resources. And I should note that all StarTalk resources are free and available to all teachers. We have hundreds of resources specifically for Chinese teachers. One of the most popular is Classroom Activity Series, designed to help teachers keep learners engaged as they process and produce language. All of those activities have step-by-step directions, and some include video examples. So we thought we were right there to help those teachers to work from their homes in a virtual environment and yet engage students in activities that would produce and promote their learning goals. Then to overcome the fact that we were not able to have a StarTalk Spring Conference or to provide lessons during this summer at a time when teachers really needed the support and collegiality, the need to network, we at the NFLC are offering a virtual summit in 4 weeks, July 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And we will be offering panels, sharing experiences, and we're also going to hear from students. So we hope that this opportunity will enable us all to reflect on what we've learned and go forward. And I think this conference, with so many registered, is a great start in preparing us for whatever happens in the fall. Thank you.
Wow, sounds really like wonderful opportunities. Yeah. Bao Cai.
Thank you, Shuhan. I also feel honored to be on this panel. In mid-March, when schools were closed due to the COVID-19, very few of us were prepared for it. And none of us knew at that time how long the situation would last. The first things that came to teachers' minds were questions like, how will I teach my classes? How will I use the online tools, and what is available there? And so all those questions, which if I do use the online tools, which one is good for my activity? So we all had similar questions in our mind. And we know many of our K-12 Chinese teachers work alone on a daily basis, as they may be the only person teaching Chinese in that school. So there is nobody else to check with. From the perspective of class, we are an organization that was designed to provide service, support, and leadership to our K-12 Chinese teachers. So at this time, when everyone was wondering what to do and how to deal with the situation, the leadership took the form of providing support and help teachers, provide the help that teachers needed. We know what we need to do. That was to take action promptly. We contacted teachers via social media like WeChat, Line, and realized that in no time that teachers needed help and guidance in choosing and using appropriate online instructional tools. That was what we did, providing a series of 40 webinars and frontline talks to teachers on various online tools. In addition, our different committees worked closely together hand by hand to meet our members' needs in different areas like membership service issues, national Chinese Honor Society issues, related issues, and different kinds of contest issues. In sum, we swiftly responded to various needs of our members, and I'm glad to say that our members have reflected their appreciation.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And how about you, Dr. Xu?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wang, for this question. As Jia Laoshi was previously saying, one of the first questions teachers ask themselves is how can they continue to support their students in this unprecedented time? And the questions that our association, ask ourselves is how can we continue our support for the teachers during this time? And one of the obstacles that we encountered immediately was the cancellation of our annual conference, which was previously scheduled in April. But it doesn't mean that we stopped our work. In some aspect, we actually think that we are thriving under the situation. An example that I can give is the efforts made by several of our special interest groups, CLTA special interest groups. Those special interest groups we really need to thank the leaders for their foresight and vision. They have actually been hosting online activities since years ago. And by March this year, they have established a quite mature format for teachers to communicate online, whether it is through WeChat or Facebook. And starting from March, there were monthly, very regular sessions for teachers to communicate online. And we have very well-maintained website. And I've shared those URLs on the slides. On those resources, that it is really a collection of group wisdom, because you can see for each special interest group, there are 400 to 500 group members where teachers share their personal stories, examples of their successful stories in the classroom. And they have shared screenshots as well as tips about classroom management, as well as using specific techniques. And that can be a very valuable resource for teachers everywhere. Another thing that I want to mention is because our association also has a mission to disseminate research-based findings, and a lot of us are conducting surveys and interviews, and with the hope of telling each other that we are in this together, and that we're interested in teachers' well-being as well as the kind of support that they need most. I've also shared a link that's from the Technology and the Chinese Language Teaching Group, which is not exactly an affiliation of our association, but certainly very relevant. And they're calling for a monograph about research in this area. And one of our regional associations, the New England the New England Regional Association, is having their annual meeting in October under the theme of addressing the challenges. And these are the things that I think teachers can tune into if they are interested in what others are feeling about this, what others are doing.
Wow, it sounds like everybody has, really responded well to the emergency. And I also participated in many social media groups, and I could see that the transition from not knowing much all the way to right now, the teachers are pretty sophisticated, online offer. So now the good news is that most schools and universities are done for the academic year. So hopefully you and your organization can finally take a deep breath to reflect upon your experiences. So my next question is really about your reflections. Can you share with us some success stories that your efforts have produced? And what are some lessons learned? What worked and what didn't work? And what are some emerging trends or needs have you observed? So, Bao Cai, could we have you start this?
Okay, thank you, Shuhan. Throughout the past 3 months, class PD committee, the Professional Development Committee, has provided more than 40 webinars on various online tools and a series of Saturday frontline talks on topics that are most current and of deep interest to teachers. There are many success stories. We nicknamed our webinars as First Aid Kit to show how we provided relief to the urgent needs of our teachers. Many teachers learned new skills through our webinars, and in turn, they shared these skills with other teachers. At the end of the First Aid Kit period, several teachers appeared on our platform and demonstrated their teaching products. This whole process united our teachers, created a strong academic and professional learning community that made many teachers feel a sense of belonging and pride in being a member of class. In addition to the First Aid Kit Jijubao series, we went one step further and deeper in discussing the educational outlook beyond COVID-19 era. In special editions, we invited experts in the language teaching field, like several Act 4 Teachers of the Year and college professors who have done tremendous and excellent job in K-16 collaboration to discuss topics like advocacy, articulation, professional development, heritage learners, and share how immersion programs in different states dealt with challenges and what they have come up with for the new school year. All those special edition events received a wide range of appreciation from our teachers and experts in the language education field. We believe that the challenges during the COVID-19 have brought us opportunities to explore in many new areas. They have shaped and will continue to shape many things we do in the years to come. We see this as a positive change that makes us more competent, more confident, facing challenges in the future.
Wonderful. That sounds so encouraging. So how about you, Lisa, from an accessible perspective?
Yeah, there have been so many best practices and success stories that have come out of this crisis that we've faced. Teachers have not just participated in trainings, but they have taken the lead to develop trainings and to provide trainings to other teachers. Chinese teachers have been able to share specific experiences and tips to help all teachers with regards to making language comprehensible. I think the efforts that have been undertaken by not just our organization, but others have really empowered the global Chinese educators to be confident in taking on the challenges of remote learning. The webinars that we have shared, they've taken lead roles in sharing techniques and practices, have helped teachers who are working in virtual academies. They've just really stepped up in taking on these roles. For the lessons that we've learned, what worked, what didn't work, something really concerning to us right now is keeping our building level leadership educated and engaged in supporting not just languages in general, but our dual language programs and the strategies that we need to use when we shift away from these face-to-face opportunities to the remote or the hybrid models of learning. We've had to rethink a lot of our best practices, and we've had to get a lot of input from the teachers and make sure that their voices are heard by the decision makers at the state level, and as we develop those documents that trickle down to the local level to make sure that language learning is taken into account for those. There's a lot more challenges that Chinese educators have had to face in terms of social and emotional learning for their students and understanding what's going on in our home. And we know that some teachers have been nervous about racial discrimination and the sensitive topics that have to be discussed with students. And they've really stepped up. And we're really proud of the work that our language teachers have done in helping to build those cultural bridges and building that intercultural understanding as well. A lot of the emerging trends, I think, will continue past this post-COVID world into the work that we do when we move back into our regular school year in whatever our upcoming school year may look like.
That's so true. Yeah, thank you. How about you? Maybe Betsy or Dr. E, who would like to take first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, our successes are more long-term because we were not actually teaching in these last 3 years, the last 3 months. But we do know that the StarTalk Principles, which are very similar to the ACTFL core practices, they have transformed the way the teachers perform in the classroom. For example, Lisa mentioned the use of target language. By the resources we have developed and the coaching we've provided, we've showed teachers how this could be done, and we've turned non-believers into veteran implementers. We have resources that actually show a Chinese teacher with students in their 3rd day of class, all in Chinese, and they are definitely demonstrating comprehension. We have learned that the teachers in the StarTalk program report it as transformative, that these principles can be implemented. And those teachers go on to teach over 34,000 students each academic year. And one of our famous success stories is Ying Jin, a StarTalk teacher participant who stayed with her program and went on to become a lead instructor, was named the 2018 ACTFL Teacher of the Year. So we're very proud, and I believe she was the first Chinese teacher to receive that award. So lessons learned are very broad also. We've learned that all students can learn Chinese. It's a beautiful language and the culture is so rich, and they really can learn it if provided engaging experiences. 80% of the students who participate in the summer programs indicate their plans to continue summer programs, to continue learning Chinese. Sadly, not all of those students have academic year programs to return to. And that's one of our goals, to increase the accessibility to language classes, Chinese classes for our students. And we've also learned that when we work with our teachers in the summer, they perform beautifully. We do practice teaching. But then when they get back into their academic year classrooms, it doesn't always work out as well as they had practiced, because those are real life students that they're working with. And so we've learned that to be effective, we must continue coaching those students those teachers through the academic year. And we're working on ways to implement that practice. And we're also fine-tuning the way we offer language, the sequence of language programs for teachers, so that they can grow more, their growth can be more effective both professionally and personally. Emerging trends, certification. If we reach our goal of having more Chinese programs in the academic school year, we need to get our teachers certified. So we are working with our summer programs that many of them do lead to certification. And we also have a resource, LangCred, langcred.org, which provides information on routes and programs in each of the 50 states. The biggest trend we all know is how to teach effectively online. We all know, for so many years, we've been witness to what effective classroom teacher looks like, that face-to-face instruction, but what does it look like online? And I'm so excited to hear from all of the teachers in the next couple of days to help us grow in that.
Yeah, that is so true. And, the space has opened up tremendously. So how about you, Dr. Xu?
Yeah, so for success stories, I want to focus on something that are more of teachers' joint effort. We are very happy and proud to see that our teachers, our individual teachers, are being proactive and expressive in what they need. In many cases, they are initiating online discussions and online forums. And a case in point that I want to mention is an upcoming event that's going to happen this Saturday in the afternoon, and that's initiated by individual teachers and hosted by regional associations. And the topic is on K-16 articulation, which is very important. And I think it's a very successful endeavor, not just because it has already attracted more than 300, close to 400 participants, and inviting experts from different fields, more than a dozen experts, but also that it really reflects what teachers need during this critical period of time. Meanwhile, our headquarters is also collaborating with special interest groups and regional associations, and with the plan of hosting some virtual forums this summer as well. For the question about what worked and what didn't work, I want to share something that I've seen from a survey that I collected with some collaborators, and it really reflects what teachers feel about their experience in their teaching in the past few months. So a lot of teachers actually felt that online teaching didn't turn out as daunting as they had initially anticipated. On the other hand, online assessment is something that perhaps they need more adaptations to. Another big thing that teachers discuss is engagement. And we've realized that technology, we can use various kinds of technologies to engage students for practicing of one language feature. At the same time, engaging students long time in an online platform is not easy. And it's very different from engaging them in face-to-face context. Another thing that teachers mentioned is that they really value collaboration on a national scale, and they value the resources that are shared, which is exactly what we are doing right now today.
Wow, this is wonderful. I hope someone in the audience is taking notes, because, I see several dissertation books coming, out of all these experiences. So now I'd like to change the gear a little bit. I would ask each panelist a more in-depth question regarding your own or your organization's perspective. And any one of you who would like to address that question is also welcome after the person had a chance to say something. So Betsy, let's start with you. From the StarTalk perspective, how can language learning be made more widely available and accessible, especially with the fact that StarTalk has created a wealth of resources and knowledge base, which can be shared? So what are the best platforms or outlets for disseminating this wealth of resources?
So the obvious answer is increased access to more effective online experiences. And we need to maximize the opportunities that online learning offers while minimizing the challenges. And I think that's something we'll be addressing here today. We at StarTalk are looking to put our resources online in hubs, in different platforms to enable sharing and easier adaptation to academic year programs. But I think it all comes back to online. I think we've learned an awful lot in the last 3 months. And I'm amazed at, think about it, if a state or a district or even a school announced at one point that they were going to transform face-to-face classrooms to online learning, it would take years. We would pilot, we would learn, we would revise, and we'd do it all over again. These teachers in our audience did this in sometimes overnight. And I think that's good. I think we're learning by experience rather than theory. So I think online learning has opened a huge opportunity for Chinese languages that are not often available in many public schools across the country. And I think, too, we have so many excited Chinese students in the summer, in our summer programs, that want to continue learning but don't have a place to learn. And I'm hoping that a platform or continued learning via online, nationally led, is what we're looking for. And we're also looking to connect StarTalk to dual language immersion programs and heritage language programs to get them into the schools. We have an abundance of resources for Chinese teachers. And again, we're always thinking, and now we're thinking more online than ever before, how can these resources be made available and easy to use for these teachers in the academic years, and resources that will promote articulation, because that is a huge issue also.
Totally.
So I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. This is very thought-provoking. Yeah. So, Lisa, from the state supervisor's perspective, what are some equity, equality, and access issues that have surfaced or excavated through the emergency responses this spring? Additionally, how can Chinese language teachers seek information to deepen their understanding of American history and culture so that they can be better equipped to be effective educators? Specifically, this may address the fact that many Chinese teachers are of Chinese background, and the role of Chinese teachers as cultural ambassadors, and also the increasing tension between the United States and China. So that's a big topic.
It's a very big topic, Shuhan, and lots of pieces there. So I'll try to be as succinct as I can. But I think a lot of what you're asking in your question boils down to the big difference between learning languages from an app and learning languages from a person, and that is relationships. So much of this question, I think, can be addressed through the lens of building and establishing relationships that allow teachers to learn and students to learn from the teachers' experiences. There's a lot of different institutions, organizations, and publications right now that are offering resources. Virginia is no exception. Our state education agency has provided a lot of resources for teachers and school districts to use. But what we can't do is build a platform that enables teachers to maintain those relationships with the students that you would have one-on-one. So I think the real equity issue comes in is how do we make sure that every student has access to that caring individual teacher and to that relationship that can be maintained through technology? How do you build that learning community? How do you maintain that engagement in learning, not just the requirement to pass a test, but the learning of the ability to communicate and to engage in intercultural conversations, which are sometimes difficult when you're not face-to-face, so that you can see all those reactions in person. Learning about American history through the lens of a non-native-born American provides, I think, a unique opportunity for not just our Chinese teachers, but all of our language teachers to be able to help students understand history from a different point of view. For example, we teach in our American history classes the concepts of colonialism and then later on manifest destiny. But we don't often give students the opportunity to look at these concepts from other points of view and other perspectives. And we don't look at the negative impacts on the indigenous people that those policies may have had that are not representative in our textbooks and our curriculum. So by talking about these subjects in a language that is taught by a non-native English speaker, we have the opportunity for students to learn different perspectives of the history that they've only learned from one point of view. Now, for Chinese teachers to do that, obviously they need resources and the ability to understand what the other perspective is as well. And so I would encourage you to start with your own relationship building, starting out with the teachers in your building, with your department chairs, and with our sister organization members, our NADSFL, which is the district supervisors for languages. If you're fortunate enough to be in a district that has a district supervisor, I would encourage you to ask them to connect you with teachers of history with teachers of English language learners and supervisors of English language learners who have a lot of perspective on how to deal with the built-in inequities that come in for our system. So I think this is a really big topic. We could probably do an hour-long session on this one, but I really think my main one is focus on the relationships that you build and talk about these things ahead of time so that you can share them with your students honestly and try to address some of those inequities.
Wow, that is so true. That's the heart of the whole thing, is that to have the relationship and to have the empathy and the ability to try to, look at things from different perspectives. Yeah. So Yi, how can Chinese educators in the K-16 setting collaborate even more closely to promote the study of Chinese language and culture? Specifically, what are some points of collaboration that you see that can produce some empirical data that can help the field to increase its knowledge base and also enhance the pedagogical skills?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it is a very timely question, although we have been discussing this for a long period of time. But right now, I think the timing is also very right because under the challenging situations, I think we are realizing more of the common grounds that we have, regardless of which levels that we are in. So among the topics that we are discussing today, or more specifically among the topics of online teaching, for instance, assessment or engagement or the importance of communication with students or with their parents, whether to offer synchronous education or asynchronous. These are the decisions or the kind of things that teachers at K-12 level as well as at college level have. And once we realize that we have a lot of common grounds, I think the possibilities of collaboration are actually quite limitless. For instance, action research can possibly be the thing that K-12 instructors as well as college instructors can join effort with to test out the effectiveness of certain pedagogy. Case studies in a longitudinal sense, a qualitative analysis. In terms of themes and topics that we can address, I see proficiency standard to be something that both program directors at college level and high school teachers would be caring about, that the things that they would be interested in, to know things like what does it mean for students to have novice level proficiency in terms of fluency, accuracy, and language complexity, and how can we help them to achieve that? And other topics could be literacy education, and that's important in both K-12 and college level too. So I think once we have the right mindset that we have a lot of common grounds to explore, we can really tackle the issue of which joint point that we can actually collaborate on. And then we can, there are a lot of different research types. Survey is also, it's not necessarily the kind of empirical research, but there was a survey study done 20 years ago that looked at high school students and college students' textbooks, their classroom methodologies, what teachers and students perceive to be their strengths and weaknesses. These are all the things that we could be doing.
Yeah, that is so true. We just need to really have more research that would be application, value to teachers. In other words, we also not just research, but also the bridge to the research, to use them in the classroom. Before I go to Bao Cai, I just would like to remind the participants that you can write in the questions in the chat box. And later we will have a Q&A session, and we'll try to address some of the questions. And if not, later afterwards, we'll try to deal with them. But definitely, we are interested in having your responses. So, Bao Cai,
yeah.
Actually, I have participated several of your webinars and 急救包,
Oh,
and
that's great.
And I'm very, very impressed with the quality and the topics, the variety of topics that you have been able, class have been able to offer. So I wonder, what are some of the biggest surprises or needs that have emerged from the questions and discussions among Chinese teachers.
Thank you, Shuhan. Again, talking about surprises, my biggest surprise is the sheer number of dedicated teachers who have followed us throughout the entire 3 months. Consistently, each session averaged about 160 participants, and we then continued to the WeChat and Line discussion groups after the webinars. And this has brought our teachers in our field closer than ever. And teachers commented, like, we are not alone. Class is there with us. Okay, another pleasant surprise is our teachers' adaptability. Excuse me. The adapting to their each webinar. So after each webinar, teachers quickly adapt their teaching to incorporate the new tool and the new focus, not just technology, but from technology to social emotional learning. We also discovered that among our board members and teachers, there are some, I'll call them crouching tiger and hidden dragons. 我们卧虎藏龙真的是 although we have known our board members and teachers, they are talented in many ways, but it was amazing to realize that Lina 老师 could host a webinar like an award-winning TV host. We also have Sarah Chow 老师 as our webinar producer, who did all the technical recording and editing in the first class skills. So it was it was also evident that we've got such a great team who collaborated and supported one another to the fullest capacity to create a seamless coordination. This seamless coordination was demonstrated in the process of organizing, planning, and holding each webinar in a professional manner. It was also demonstrated in various aspects of work among different committees, such as membership, NCLC, our website, social media, as well as different contest committees. Even though those things are not really they are not really surprises, but it was so absolutely amazing. It's good to witness them happen in such a short time, particularly during the difficult time. And lastly, we never thought there would be such drastic need for webinars. These series are incorporated into many teachers' weekly routine now. In our new normalcy. This spans across grade levels and program types. It has fostered the most natural platform for pre-K 16 articulation. And many teachers have actually set watching videos of our webinars on class YouTube channel as their personal summer professional development plan. And our YouTube channel since March 17 has grown from 25 to 729 subscribers. And please subscribe our YouTube channel and just search class membership. You can find it. In terms of emerging needs and the demands of the Chinese teachers, we came to see teachers need more structured professional development. In realizing that need of the professional development, we have planned a master teacher program. And after this Jiju Bao series, the master teacher program will provide teachers with 60 professional development hours with an option to earn college graduate credits at a very low tuition. We have so far received almost 50 applications, and we are now in the process of screening those applications, and we'll make an announcement soon. It will start in early July throughout the summer. And we believe by offering low-cost online PD class has provided access to training for all teachers. This reduces the gap between teachers who are at well-funded schools and those who aren't. Thank you, Shuhan.
That is so true. And earlier, Betsy also mentioned that, we have, now the field has a lot of best practices, but we also need to have some research and combine them so that we really have, like what Baotai said, more structured PD as well, and not just only best practices. And so both are necessary. Again, I would like to remind our audience, if you have questions, please send to us. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, let me also ask our panelists for a question about, with an eye towards the future. So how can the traditional way of doing school tap into the innovation and strategies that you have engaged virtually this spring? In other words, how has the virtual learning opened up possibilities and revealed different strategies for teaching and learning in traditional spaces? Lisa, why don't you mention this? Because, why don't you talk about this first? Because you actually mentioned hybrid, form. And yeah.
So, when we come back in the fall, none of us, I think, are completely sure of what teaching is going to look like. And so when we prepare the strategies we'll be using, I think we have to take the best of what we know how to do in the traditional classroom and what we've learned from this remote learning and try to develop a plan that will be flexible and be able to change depending on what the circumstances may bring. One thing that I think language teachers really had an advantage over others is that we are so used to dealing with a real diverse population of students, that their language learning abilities that come to us from all different levels. So I think our colleagues can learn a lot from us about how we handle having students at multiple different levels of learning. And I think all of our content area colleagues are going to face that when they come back in the fall, because students will be at such a broad spread of where they are and what they were able to obtain through this emergency remote learning program. And our Chinese language teachers, I think, have dealt very well with students who come to them with very novice abilities all the way up to the intermediate and sometimes the advanced level abilities, and commingling them within their classes and being able to address all of their needs. I think another area that we have begun to address that we can take back is, how did we highlight our students with special needs in this remote learning environment? And what did we do differently to meet their needs that can help us when we move back to the tradition? Really keep that, in focus, that there are some challenges that we have to deal with in regards to diverse learners, in regards to whether they might have a specific learning disability or a home challenge that prevents them from learning at their best. And the remote learning situation, I think, has really brought some of those to light. And the last one, I think, is sort of tied back to the question you asked me earlier. The remote learning really sort of emphasized some of these areas of equity and brought these conversations to light. So when we go back to our traditional classrooms, I think we can continue that, and that will help us to ensure that those relationships that we've started to build continue, that we look for resources to address teaching tolerance, to address tolerance within our classrooms as well as in society as a whole. So I think there's a lot we can do to take some of the lessons we've learned in remote learning and incorporate those into our traditional classroom space when we hopefully get back to that.
So true. Yeah. Actually, while you are, addressing this question, I think we can blend in the interest of time, blend in some questions from the audience, and I will also, direct the questions to the appropriate person that I think might be able to answer this question. So, Professor Xu, some participants are wondering, are there some effective online assessment tools for Chinese reading, listening, speaking, and writing?
Yeah, I'm happy to address this question to the extent that I can. I think one thing that is mentioned about assessment, and from both teachers' responses and experts' point of views, is that in an online context, a lot of the traditional assessment may be better transformed into project-based type of assessment for various reasons. And if we are doing more traditional assessment in the more traditional kind of sense, teachers have used gameful apps such as Kahoot in their classroom, sort of to engage students in the classroom, as well as for very quick formative assessment at the same time. Another thing that I see is, and also from teachers' reflections that they find useful, is the use of text such as a voice thread for enhanced kind of feedback for students. Teachers are actually very innovative in this kind of situation. And another thing that just came to mind is that some teachers have mentioned the use of chat box in their classrooms, and just like what we are using here, and they find it a very useful function that they may be willing to incorporate in their future traditional classrooms as well, because it provides an additional space that when a question is asked, it's not just one single student that is answering, but that others can participate. And it provides an opportunity for reading and typing. And the teachers can have access to the record for feedback afterwards. But overall, I think it is not necessarily about the technology, which technology is necessarily the best for assessment. It's more about how teachers use them. And I encourage teachers to check out the stories and resources that have been shared online.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Okay. The next question can actually go to Betsy and then Baocai. Okay. So both of you can answer this because I think they are very relevant to both of you in that, Betsy. So, and this is actually from our dear friend, Scott McGinnis. And so he was asking, obviously there are a lot of resources for teachers and so forth. Have you thought about or have you seen students using social media groups, and for their learning, to engage their learning? I think that's really a very powerful channel as well. Yeah.
So I personally have not seen that. So maybe we go to Baocai, but I just want to say one thing while I have the floor. I have learned so much from my fellow panelists during this discussion. And I just want to go back to something where I said earlier about minimizing the challenges. And we all know what makes learning, and whether face-to-face or virtual, we all know the critical components, and the teacher is by far the most. And what Lisa said about, the online, we lose sometimes that ability to create relationships. And I would urge us all to be looking into that, and how can we minimize that and actually maintain that relationship building with teacher-student relationships. But also, I think one of the great opportunities that this time has offered us is that we're that single Chinese teacher, and many of our teachers are the one Chinese teacher in a building, if not a district. We've come together in WeChat. We formed communities. We're learning from each other. And I just have to say, I think that's amazing. And the learning that's happening on social media, I have not been following that. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on what I think some of the opportunities are as we go forward. But Baocai?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Baocai?
Yeah, in terms of students on the social media, I don't have access to their. The teachers and students are in two different. We don't. Yeah, I have not observed anything like that. But from a teacher perspective, I believe because of this pandemic influence, we believe there will be more student-centered online learning compared to traditional way. In terms of there will be more project-based learning and inquiry-based learning. So those will have more opportunities for students to interact with each other. So the teachers will lead them to the right direction or to the more academic discussion. I believe that's my.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. And Betsy, let me go back to you because there's a question for you as well. That is, can you talk a little bit more about where can they get the information for StarTalk July Summit?
Oh, that's one of the links that's going to be posted in this session chat, but also, that will be available. But even just Google National Foreign Language Center Virtual Summit, and that will come up. But yes, many of our participants so far, of the 1,800 that have registered, many are Chinese teachers, and we're so excited about that.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Lisa, I have two questions for you. One is on, can you suggest some how can they get information on learning about American history?
Okay, sure. The first thing I would suggest is...
Sorry.
Look local.
One thing is that from learning about American history from the target language perspective. Sorry. Through Chinese.
Yeah, but
totally.
that definitely changes the question quite a bit, because as we know, we have a dearth of resources available in the target language in our content area. If you are not in a school district that has dual language immersion programs, I would recommend reaching out to a nearby school district, or if you have to another state that has dual language programs, because they have created resources many times. Our colleagues in Utah and Delaware and North Carolina and Georgia that have really robust dual language programs may have some resources in Chinese where those programs exist. So if you can't find somebody in your school district, then I would recommend reaching out to your state level leader. And please feel free, you can always reach out to me and I can put you in touch with a state leader who does have a program if you don't have one or can't find a program to reach out to. Yeah,
and actually this reminds me that the state of Washington, they actually have the open education resource, and they have some social studies materials online. That's open. So later we can find it from Michelle. And personally, I am also working with the Delaware Department of Education, and we are developing 8th grade social studies materials for in Chinese. And that's 8th grade, the focus is on U.S. history. Yeah, and that's all done in Chinese. So we're developing that material, and next year will be available. Yes. And the next question is to all of you, because that's actually like the white elephant in the room. That is, for K-12 programs, there are programs being eliminated or decreased. And in universities, that's an even more urgent issue that, the enrollment in the higher ed based on the Mother Language association's survey has been decreasing as well. So how do we deal with that? Yeah. So who would like to take on this, from K-12 and also from university perspective? It's a big question.
It is. Shuhan, I'm happy to start with a little bit. It's during these challenging times, we know there's going to be fiscal consequences. And I think it's really tempting for policymakers to look at programs that are often deemed as extras or specials. And decision makers should really carefully consider the repercussions of cutting language programs at a time really when they're most needed. Program cuts now are going to take many years to undo, if we can undo them, because once that qualified staff is lost, we know how difficult it is to replace qualified language staff. And now more than ever, we need the intercultural communication skills that our language teachers bring to our students and help them build, communicating both within our borders and beyond into our global community. And language programs really are the unique opportunity to engage in conversations that lead to increased understanding and build intercultural competence. And so I think we all need to make sure that we are advocating for programs from the beginning before the cuts are made, to make sure that we are letting our district leaders know, our community members know that we are not just teaching students an extra or a special, that what we are doing is to be globally competent and good global citizens, and really putting ourselves out there to get that message known.
Yeah, and I think in the K-12 situation, Accessible would be a good resource that encourage teachers to contact Accessible colleagues, at the state level, so that they are at least are aware of what's going on at the local level. Yeah. Outside, yes.
Yeah. Before I address this question directly, I wanted to clarify one thing, that what I was saying earlier regarding social media between teacher and students. Our school districts has clear, statements that teachers and students should not have this social media interaction. Yeah, but we have close connection with students and parents through the school platform. We have, especially during the AP testing time, we constantly, connect with students through those the school platform. Yeah, we have close connection with students. It's just the social media part, it's a different thing. Yeah. In terms of the challenges, I think as a Chinese teacher, we do our work well, and we keep our students interested. That's the key. If our students say, I need to go back to my Chinese class, I need to continue to learn Chinese, that voice, that need, school is open for the needs of the students. If that need is there, I think that's a very strong voice. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah. Dr. Shi, would you like to address the enrollment issue or the elimination of programs?
From the perspective of colleges, I definitely think more collaboration between K-12 and college is one of the keys that we can continue to strengthen enrollment both at K-12 level and at college level. If we join effort in things like summer camps, for instance, offered by universities to high school students, and just more communication about what placement tests entail so that students can move on smoothly when they move on to college. These are the things that we can do to create a more smooth pipeline for students in our region. And another thing that teachers are discussing is perhaps offer more varieties of Chinese language classes. Perhaps if culture is the thing that attracts students, we give them what they are most interested in. And that also sort of taps into what Jia Laoshi has said, to identify students and need, and to combine their interest with language learning.
Yes, absolutely. And in the interest of time, I would like to thank our panelists for your participation and contribution. I just have to say that I personally found today's panel discussion to be very powerful, informative, and inspiring. And I hope others feel similarly as well. So we find ourselves in this unsettling times, and the challenges facing us are daunting. However, There is a silver lining in that the pandemic has also taught us invaluable lessons. We can get through these crises, but we need to do it by working together locally and globally. Teaching Chinese language is not just about how many Hanzi a student needs to know or how to put vocabularies together into coherent sentences or discourse. It's really about, like Lisa and everybody has said, it's about how we can help people understand and respect one another, identify commonality in divergence, and engage together in the learning enterprise. The role of language and intercultural competence is so urgent and critical as we fight against the global issues such as health pandemic, hunger, poverty, educational equity, gender and racial justice, climate change, and world peace. Please join me to thank all our panelists for their participation and contribution. We will post a set of PowerPoints with the panelists' organization and contact information at the virtual NCLC. On behalf of our panelists here today and the NCLC organizers, we want to thank you all for listening in today. We wish you a productive time participating in and learning from all the wonderful learning sessions and exhibits that NCLC has offered you. 希望大家满载而归，平安如意。谢谢大家。
谢谢。